it's a superhero matchup. It's a great fight for Bisping to take, you know, at this stage of his career, to really solidify himself as one of the greats. You know, he's already got that win over Anderson Silva. That's a massive credential on his record. To add GSP to that, really, you know, it puts Michael up there in the top 5 of all time. You really can't deny that because of the people that he's beaten, the way he's done it. What a massive fight, Michael Bisping against GSP. You know, you've got Michael Bisping, who's one of the most prolific fighters in the UFC, one of the most polarizing as well. You know, people watch his fights, you know, whether they love him or hate him, they want to watch him fight because they know what they're going to get. He's going to be aggressive, he's going to have a high work rate, he's going to push his opponents. And you just can't question his heart. You know, that's the one thing that's got him through all these fights. He's, you know, sometimes he's technically outclassed by his opponents in one area or another. Sometimes they're more powerful, sometimes they're better grapplers. But the heart and tenacity of Michael Bisping always shines through, and that's what's made him a champion. Then on the other side of the table, you've got someone like Georges St-Pierre, who is proven to be one of the best champions of all time. Coming back from a 4-year layoff, stepping up a weight class, taking on one of the busiest, most active, most well-conditioned fighters in the middleweight division. You know, I mean, it's a superhero matchup. It's a great fight for Bisping to take, you know, at this stage of his career, to really solidify himself as one of the greats. You know, he's already got that win over Anderson Silva. That's a massive credential on his record. To add GSP to that, really, you know, it puts Michael up there in the top 5 of all time. You really can't deny that because of the people that he's beaten, the way he's done it. You know, since seizing that middleweight title, everybody's been calling him out, but GSP's the biggest fight of all. You know, there are so many people that want to see GSP come back. They remember how good he was when he was fighting. They remember how dominant he was when he was fighting. You know, he's able to take people down and control them, beat them up. You know, always threatening them, always keeping himself out of danger. A very, very intelligent fighter, very strategical in the way he approaches things. Quite different to Michael Bisping. You know, Michael's the aggressive trash talker that, as we've all seen, been trying to get inside GSP's head in the build-up to this fight. And GSP holds back. He's very reserved. He's very disciplined. It's a fascinating bout. I think it's a big task for GSP to deal with Bisping in this one. I think it's a tough test for him to come back a weight class up and take on the champion straight away. You know, Michael's going to be able to keep a pace on him, and I can see GSP trying to take Michael down and control him for a couple of rounds, but to hold Michael down is very difficult to do, even for light heavyweights like Rashad Evans at the time. So it's a tough test for GSP, but you know, he wants the fights that remind people how great he is, and if he beats Bisping, he'll get that respect. I think the weight jump is going to be an issue for GSP. I mean, he's always been a strong welterweight, but he was never particularly a big welterweight. You know, in comparison to some of the other guys I fought, I remember thinking GSP's, you know, fairly small in comparison. An excellent athlete, very well muscled, very lean, but for size-wise, he's nothing in comparison to Michael Bisping, who's 6'2". He's a big middleweight who moved down from light heavyweight. And you see, this is the thing with this fight. It's fascinating because we've seen GSP take welterweights down and control them and basically do what he likes with them. So what he's doing now is he's stepping into the middleweight division and he's giving up some of those natural advantages that he had at welterweight. You know, it's the same as the reason why people want to see Demetrius Johnson move up to bantamweight. They want to see him relinquish some of those advantages that he has in his speed, in his timing, in his technique, and take on a bigger man. And that's exactly what GSP's giving the fans, which is, you know, that's why the fans love him. You know, he's not coming back and picking off a top 10 welterweight with the hopes of getting a shot at the title again. He's going straight in at the top in a bigger weight class full of absolute murderers. I think it's a very brave move for GSP to do, but you know, he's not going to do it if he's not confident, if he's not sure that he can beat Michael Bisping. And of all the people, GSP could fight anybody in the UFC, so he's chosen Michael Bisping. And that's partly why Michael's been upset about it, because he feels like GSP's selected him as an easy opponent. And obviously we all know that's not the case. So I'm interested to see how GSP approaches it, what his thoughts are about Michael Bisping and why he chose Michael as an opponent. The reality is, though, you know, in 2 fights, GSP could be the champ. You know, he could take the belt off Bisping and move down and face Woodley. There's a lot of super fights in it for GSP, but he's got to beat Bisping first. Yeah, I mean, that is a real genuine grudge match. A lot of the time when fighters trash talk and stuff, it's to get inside their opponents' heads, to get the fans wound up and excited. I mean, this is genuine. These guys would fight if anybody was watching. It doesn't matter. They don't like each other. You know, this is a rivalry that started on the mats at Team Alpha Male and has developed on The Ultimate Fighter. You know, in the public eye, everybody's seen this develop. Everybody's seen the drama in the camp and the fracturing, you know, between Uriah Faber and Duane Ludwig when Duane Ludwig left and took TJ Dillashaw with him. The whole team was affected by that, and you know, they're a very close-knit team. So when one person feels it, particularly the head coach, all of the rest of the fighters on the team, they back that coach up. You know, we saw it on The Ultimate Fighter when Garbrandt backed up Uriah Faber against Conor McGregor. You know, he's a fiery kid. He's very emotional, and so's TJ Dillashaw. And what's interesting in this fight is that they're from the same school of thought. You know, that they've got very similar movement patterns, very similar game plan and approach into their attack. The way they stitch their strike into their wrestling is very similar. So I find this quite interesting because obviously now they know TJ Dillashaw very well. He's moved away to work with Duane Ludwig and the team in Colorado. So they're now looking back at the Team Alpha Male guys and saying, how do we reverse engineer their game plan and beat them? And Cody Garbrandt is, you know, back at Team Alpha Male with all of his coaches around him, knowing TJ Dillashaw as a training partner and as a friend, and now looking at, you know, what do we do to beat him? What could he have potentially changed that would cause us problems? And, you know, how do we prepare Cody Garbrandt to beat him and to kind of, you know, reclaim the credibility of the gym, having lost TJ Dillashaw? I think managing the emotion is going to be a real challenge for both of them. I felt like Cody Garbrandt, he's a very emotional fighter. He was very emotional going into the Dominic Cruz fight, but he handled that so well. You know, he was calm, he was collected in the fight. He didn't take any unnecessary risks, and he outclassed one of the best in that division that we've ever seen. I mean, Dominic Cruz is, you know, he ran circles around Uriah Faber twice. He did the same thing to DJ Dillashaw, and I think that Cody's got a slight advantage because he was able to sit octagon side and watch TJ Dillashaw chase Dominic Cruz around the octagon and not get the belt. You know, it was an interesting learning experience for both of them, but the difference is that Dillashaw was in there experiencing it and losing his belt in the process, and Garbrandt was on the outside watching and taking notes and thinking, okay, I'm going to beat Dominic Cruz next, how do I do it? And now he's going to look at TJ Dillashaw and do the same thing. It's fascinating because of how well they know each other and the storyline, the foundation that, you know, that serves as a base for this one. I think a lot of things have changed around Cody Garbrandt, you know, with his relationship and him, you know, soon to be a father and all those kind of things. But I think he realizes that everything hinges on this win. I think he knows that no matter what happens in his future, it's going to be affected massively by this next fight. You know, whether he continues on as the champion and defends the belt and, you know, possibly looks at moving up or down a weight class for a super fight. All of those things are on the table right now, but if he loses to TJ Dillashaw, all those opportunities cross over to the other side. And, you know, especially given the fact that, you know, now he's going to be a father, he knows that, that's in the back of his mind. That's an added motivation for him to, you know, to really solidify himself as the champion, set him up for the future. You know, TJ Dillashaw's coming in with, you know, with a bee in his bonnet. He wants to prove that his decision to move away from Team Alpha Male was the right thing to do. I don't necessarily think he did it because he doesn't like the Team Alpha Male guys. I think if he could have left on good terms, he would have done. But the decision ultimately was his to, you know, for the best of his career. And we sometimes forget, especially when teams get so tightly knit like the Alpha Male guys, we forget this is an individual sport. And in that gym, there were a lot of guys that could potentially fight TJ Dillashaw for his belt in the future. So it kind of made sense to move away and to be focused on yourself as a fighter and, you know, to follow his favourite striking coach in Duane Ludwig. It's, you know, it's a fascinating storyline, and I think we're going to see the best of both of these guys. And don't be surprised if this turns into a trilogy because, you know, this is going to be a close fight. They know each other so well. It's going to be a back and forth one, and then as soon as it's over, we're going to be like, okay, when's the rematch? Joanna's a special fighter. She's a very special fighter. You know, being in Poland right now, everybody we speak to is telling us the same thing. She's on loads of billboards around the city. I mean, she's really broken the market, the international market, and she's you know, everybody loves her. She's a sweetheart. You know, you follow her on social media. She's moved to Florida. She's having a great time. She's living the dream. You kind of just want to follow her journey. And at the same time, when she fights, she's vicious. She's tenacious. It's amazing to watch her go from this, you know, smiley young girl that's skateboarding down the road in Florida to, you know, facing off with Rose Namajunas and say, I'm going to break you, and mean it like she does. Like, I mean, I've faced off with loads and loads of guys, and I've never seen that intensity in anybody's eyes. She's a special individual. And on the flip side, you've got Rose Namajunas, and I would say the same about her. You know, she's earlier in her career, she's still developing, she's still adding things to her game, but every time we see her, she's improved something. You know, she's a growing young fighter. I mean, it's a big opportunity for her to face the champion at this stage in her career. Worst case scenario, she's going to step in there and learn a big lesson from Joanna and realize what it takes to be a champion. But at the same time, you know, with the scrambles that she creates and with the chaos that she causes in a fight, that could overwhelm Joanna. We don't know. I mean, Joanna's defended a belt very well in the past few fights, but she's been fighting people that are predictable for her. You know, Carolina, she knew was going to be a kickboxer. She fought Claudia before. She knows what to expect from these fighters. Whereas Rose is so young, she's developing all the time. And again, with the coaches around her that she's got, that are always adding new things to her game. I think she's going to come in there absolutely intent on taking that belt from Joanna. And I think before, a lot of people have stepped in to face Joanna and had a question in their mind as to whether they could actually get the job done. And I don't think that question exists in Rose's mind. I think it's a big risk for Wonder Boy. He's going to be the bigger fighter in there. He's good at fighting at longer range as well. He's got a more unorthodox style with that karate background. So his ability to stand in a side stance and pick people off with long range kicks, I think he's gonna be a good game plan for this fight. You know, Masvidal is one of my favourites in the division. I've watched him all the way through his early career. He's been a fascinating fighter to watch, and the way he approaches the fights as well, that absolute focus that he has, that almost, he's almost insulted that someone would get in the octagon with him. And I like that attitude. The complaint about Masvidal sometimes is that he kind of hangs back and lets the fight come to him. And I don't think he can do that in this one, because Wonder Boy's output is very good. When he feels like he's got range to work and feels like he's got space and time to work, he'll throw long 4, 5, 6 strike combinations, whereas Masvidal is much more of a counter striker. So he's going to wait, he's going to walk you down, then wait for you to throw so he can counter. Predicting the counters of Wonder Boy Thompson is going to be challenging, because they're not going to come from a traditional kickboxing or Thai boxing stance. So there's going to be some adaptation for Masvidal there. One thing that we can't forget though is Masvidal's got a good ground game as well. He's a good wrestler. He's got a decent submission game as well, and I think we saw that against Damian Maia. I mean, he didn't come out on top in that fight, but he showed that he can hang with the best. It might be a smart thing for him to do to try and challenge Wonder Boy in the clinch, maybe take him down and wrestle him a little bit, you know, wear his arms out, and possibly even work in the clinch. You know, he is a Thai boxer, so if you can get that plum clinch, start working the knees to the body and the elbows, that's going to be a skill set that Wonder Boy is not really comfortable with working. So there are benefits for both fighters in this one. It's going to be a striking extravaganza without a doubt. You know, one of these guys is going to take some big shots and go down to the canvas at some point. I think it's going to be a razor-thin one, though. I think both of these guys could walk away with the victory, and I think both of them would contend for the title and do very well.